Now we're going to move on to swirls and figures of eights. A swirl is actually quite difficult, and again, really important that you do that in a single movement on the machine. Don't try to keep turning the fabric, because otherwise you will get a bit of a mess. So swirls here become figures of eight. So on your very first swirl, you're going to start from the centre and come out one, and you're going to swirl quite nicely, and then you're going to come round and here, but this time you have to remember to leave room to be able to double back. So here it's always a figure of eight, and you can spread these as much as you want. You can make them big and you can make them small. It's really a way of filling. Again, you could do this down a border as well. If you've got areas that you feel done it, you can just vary the size of them. You know, by knowing what you're quilting on, you know how far apart you can actually quilt. So most needle punched waddings will allow you to quilt approximately 8 inches apart, so you can actually be quite big and generous in what you do. If you're using a polyester needle punched wadding, then generally you can quilt 10 inches apart. If you're using these very high loft waddings that tend to be the much cheaper ones, and they're not needle punched, then you actually have to quilt much closer together because they will shred in a machine. You can do here as well. Now, of course, quilting, you're not supposed to double over, but if you do, is it the end of the world? I don't think so. So, you know what, it doesn't matter. Don't beat yourself up. If you get points in certain places, unless it really offends you, then I wouldn't worry about that either, because in the grand scale of things, those things don't get noticed. But this is swirls and figures of eight. And then we're going to look at Bishop's fan, and it is easier here just to sort of fold it. This is another good design for a border. I'm just folding this because it will make it easier to do. So a Bishop's fan. So I'm going to start with a swirl, and this is working along a border, remember. So here I'm going to double back. Now I'm going to come over that fan, and I'm going to do sort of like a wonky heart, and I'm going to shadow that. And this is actually a variation on Bishop's fan that I'm drawing first. And I'm going to come over the top of each of those in one movement. And now I'm going to come along again. I'm just going to move my paper over so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to do another swirl. And back again. I'm going to come in, and I'm going to double back, and I'm going to come over the top. So you get the idea of the fan shape. So it's quite nice on a border, quite dense. Again, you want a fairly plain border for that to work well. Now this is Bishop's fan this time. So coming in, and you do this swirl in the centre. And this time you bring arcs over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you just arc over again. And you can go backwards and forwards as many times as you want. So, you know, if you want to fill the border, you could do that. This part is meant to go along the ditch. So here you might have to sort of like, again, sort of adapt it. You could make a cornerstone of this. But you can see that you can move quite quickly along a block or a border by doing this. So, oops, again, I'm coming over just in loops. And back again, and back again, and back again. Okay, and then you'd work it out better. This is one where if you wanted to do that, you might want to put marks, like to sort of work out how many you want to do along a border, and then actually put little markers that give you lines to actually aim for, so you know that you want to contain the flat fan within that space, and you can space them out quite evenly then along your quilt. So I think that is the end of those ones. Spirals and like figures of 8, so when you're spiraling you're always starting in the centre and you're coming round and round and round, then you sweep out to do the figure of 8, you come back out again and go round to the next one. So that's all sort of spirals. What have we got here? This is Bishop's fan. This was one where I was talking about this being good for a border, so you could travel along, but you'd want to perhaps mark out areas on your quilt and measure it so that you knew exactly where you were putting them, and that's just a variation on the same, creating little sort of heart shapes with that.